Hey, 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 everybody. Great to see you. In fact, it is awesome to see you. We are so happy that you've decided to join us today on our Manny Monday, a very special Manny Monday, in my opinion. We have the return of the great Tracey Dupay to our airwaves. So we're super excited to have her back. And today, what we're going to be doing with Tracey, because she was on our show once before, where we got to know her, we heard her story, we talked a little bit about the ultimate evil, but today we have something a little bit more special. We have more information. This is kind of what I mean. We have Maury Terry's files from the Queen's DA transcripts that deal with Andrew Dupay and the issues that arise around his story. So I figured, well, let's get Tracey back for a part two so she can react to these in real time. But that wasn't all. That was not all, guys. Tracey was kind enough to go into her own personal archives and call out some dozen pictures for us, vintage photographs from the early 70s and mid 70s of her and her family, from her father, mother, I think her grandfather's in there, and of course the young Tracey and her sister Noelle. So it's a real honor and a pleasure to bring Tracey back to our airwaves. And I figured on this special occasion that one thing that I would want to do is have a co-host with me, because this following gentleman just brings a certain sensitivity that, well, I frankly don't. And so I wanted his energy here today with Tracey as well as my own. I'm much more of a straightforward guy, whereas Eric is a very sensitive and tender individual. And so I figured that energy would really come in handy today. So without further ado, may I introduce to you the one, the only, Eric Galati.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
I didn't go crazy today. It just doesn't feel right.
You something. Thank you, because it is a strength for me with what I'm going through with my personal life, as we all do. But you are sensitive yourself to recognize that in me. And I have seen moments of great sensitivity in you and compassion for people you've had on and stories that have been said.
Thank you, Eric. Well, I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
I've got to say this. I saw the March 14th show, the last Manny Monday winter show, when Tracey was on. And I went over it today, and I've got to say it's one of the 3 to 5 linchpins in this case. It's a fascinating, mind-blowing show. And
I
I'm
agree.
eager that it really was. It really was. And all I can say is, let's have the lady of the hour, or more than an hour, Tracey Dupay.
Hey, Tracey, how
Hi,
are you?
everyone. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Eric.
Tracey, you
Oh,
know how
you're
well off you came on that other show. You, in your own simple but profound way, directly answered every question. You reminded me of a very tacit, quiet, Passaic chief of police, John Comparetto. Question asked, answer given. Question asked, answer given. And it was very beautiful indeed, my dear. And Tracey, I've got to say this. This is the truth. You have great courage and love, both. This is the God's truth, because you have courage to come forward when many people don't want to come forward with regards to what is generally the Son of Sam case investigation and research, thanks to Manny. Nobody else has taken this to a higher level than Manny, and this is the 5th iteration of his, or the 6th. And the reason why you also have courage and love is because what you went through, let us say the official story of your father's death was a suicide. You're giving hope to people who've suffered.
agree.
By coming forward like this and showing them that they can go forward in life with a pain that will never go away, but live their lives. And that's a great thing on your part. It really is. And in some strange way, your being involved in this case even strengthens you. You know, and when Manny said at the end of the other show, you're now a part of the team, he wasn't just making you feel well, Tracey, because I can tell you right now, the information that came from that show actually makes us want to make coherent every single story that took place in what seemed to be a weird city in that period, Yonkers.
And and may I add, a very strange part of a very weird city, which of course is the Wicker Street, Pine Street, Warburton areas.
Mm.
So, so Tracey, thank you so much. And of course, all of our audience is excited to see you. Ruby's in the audience going, "Hey, Trace."
Ruby the Wizard.
Ruby the Wizard, exactly. So Tracey, how's everything going?
Good. It's going really well.
Did you have any feedback from your appearance on our last show, or did people just did it kind of come and go and not much happened?
It came and went. I just wish more people would come forward who knew my dad to tell me more stories and how he was like.
Right. And I think that that's actually an important thing to do, not only for your own personal life, but also for the case as well. I think that the case of Andrew Dupay is a mysterious one, is potentially very important, and certainly is one of these pieces of the puzzle that, in my opinion, needs more research and needs more answers. It demands it, exactly. So listen, we got a lot of people on the ground in Yonkers. There was one person that came forward last show and they remembered your dad and all that kind of stuff. And I reached out to them and they just went silent. Like, I didn't hear back from them. But hopefully maybe this show will shake the tree a little bit and we'll get some more people coming out. But in any case, I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
No, Manny, continue. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. I was going to get to the slides.
May I give a preamble to this historically about postmen at the time?
Sure, of course.
All of you. It seems to me Yonkers as a city reminds me of certain parts of Queens. I don't know it well, where it's not like a metropolis like Brooklyn or Manhattan. There seems to be almost like rural areas and suburban areas within parts of Yonkers. Am I mistaken?
Well, not exactly rural, but definitely suburban and definitely highly urbanized as well.
Near the car house, Wicker Street.
Right.
Now, the reason why I say this is because in those days, and I go back to when I was a little boy, there were 2 mail deliveries a day. I never encountered 2 a day until I went to England. But a postman, like your father, was not only of one's neighborhood, but of one's life.
Exactly.
Like the milkman, the Dugan's bread and donut delivery man, the vegetable man, the ice man. But it was as if he was a friend who was a part of the family, a familiar face in one's daily life. They would take money at that time and say, "Okay, Mrs. Johnson, an elderly woman, I'll get you the postage stamps and bring them tomorrow. You don't have to pay me now, pay me tomorrow." Or maybe it was the hot summer and they'd say, "Hey, Andy or Andrew, come on, have a cold glass of orange juice." And they would actually sit for a tiny bit in the house. John, an Irishman who delivered mail here until the 80s, he was retiring. He had been an ex-Marine, blue eyes, red hair. He says, "Hey, Eric, I'm retiring. Come on and join the party." You know where the party was, Tracey? At the post office.
At the where? At the where?
The post office. Come on, come to the party, have a drink, have something to eat. So your father was in a period of when he was a part of the community. I'm sure people loved him. I'm sure people, embraced him.
Sylvia Netto told me that she remembered him as a very nice man.
And that's why when you said that months before his passing, I'm just saying this, something frightened him, something changed him. Just as unfortunately in life we can meet many good people, he might have met many bad people. I'm not saying your daddy was a bad man, but he might have just encountered bad people who would speak to him, like one of the family, one of the neighborhood. And, that can affect a person. It frightens one.
Right, and that's of course what we're dealing with in all the potentialities of what we're dealing with in this case. So why don't we just get into Eric? Are you done?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool. So why don't we just get into the material at hand? And of course, as you all know out there in the audience, I like to be very meticulous. I like to cover all my bases, and I like to lay foundations. So one of the things that I would like to do for the purposes of this show, because I can't assume that everybody's going to go back and watch the last show, I want to actually talk about, well, first, who was Andrew Dupay? And of course, Andrew Dupay and his family lived on Lincoln Terrace in the exact area of Wicker and Pine Streets. Now, Tracey, I actually did a recent walk and talk with Mike Lorenzo, and after we on the aqueduct, literally right there at Glenwood Avenue. And after I was done, I went to Lincoln Terrace and I tried to find your house. And I thought it was 30 Lincoln Terrace, but I couldn't find a 30. What was the number of your house?
15.
15. That's why I could not find 30. I was like, did this house get knocked down? What's going on? So I did take some footage of the block, but I did not get your house number. Now that I know it, that I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and do a special filming over there just to show Lincoln Terrace and just to show your house. And I'll post that up as a little short video this week. So he lived on Lincoln Terrace. And of course, Lincoln Terrace is the exact area of Wicker and Pine Streets. He was also the mailman in the same neighborhood. And his name, of course, came up in the Ultimate Evil because of an anonymous letter sent to Maury Terry. And the contents of that anonymous letter strongly suggested that Andrew Dupay committed suicide due to something he knew and or witnessed while working. So let's get into the Dupay information from the Ultimate Evil. And Tracey, please, anytime you want me to stop and you have something to say, just stop me. Just go, hey, stop, because I can't, like I'm paying attention to the screen. Okay, so I need you to just don't feel bad for saying stop. Okay, all right. Okay. So the next day, September 20th. So this is 1977. An event occurred in Yonkers which received no publicity. I wouldn't learn of it for more than 2 years. Its implications are considerable. Andrew Dupay, 33, lived on Lincoln Terrace, less than a block from Berkowitz and the Cars. Dupay was a family man. He was married to the former Lori Heaton and was the father of 2 young daughters, aged 5 and 3. Now, Tracey, you were the 3-year-old?
Yes.
Okay. Dupay worked as a mailman, and he not only lived in the Pine Street neighborhood, he also delivered mail there to Berkowitz's building, the 2 houses on Wicker Street, and the car home, among others. Stated another way, he lived and toiled in a war zone. It is not known if Andrew Dupay read the Berkowitz article in the Post the day before. If he did, it may have affected him. But he may not have read it because since early summer, something had been troubling him, occupying his mind. An outgoing, cheerful young man who reveled in his family. And may I say that the pictures that Tracey showed us, which we're going to see after we read this passages, really do reinforce that, what Maury Terry wrote here. Absolutely. Totally seemed to revel in his family. Dupay suddenly began to act frightened. Every now and then, by the way, out there in the audience, Tracey goes away. It's like some technical glitch that happens. She'll be back in a second. Here she is. There she goes. Hey, Trace, we missed you for a sec, but don't worry. We know you're having some technical issues down there. Let me just make sure I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you. Good. All right. So an outgoing, cheerful young man who reveled in his family, Dupay suddenly began to act frightened and worried in July. His family noticed the change, as did his coworkers. He said nothing to his wife, but told a couple of friends at work that he had a big problem. Dupay said he feared for his life. Now, Tracey, before we continue on, just refresh my memory. Did you ever have conversations with your mom about this? Because you were obviously too young to know any of this in real time.
No.
You never spoke to your mom about this?
No.
Okay.
She didn't want to really talk that much.
Okay.
One would like to know who the co-workers were.
Yes.
Because he states there, co-workers. Who were the co-workers?
Right, exactly.
Where did the information of the co-workers come from?
Right. I mean, we're gonna read this anonymous letter later because we do have a copy of this anonymous letter. But good call, Eric. I mean, yeah, I wish there was a way to find these people. Actually, there probably is. He said nothing to his wife, but told a couple of friends at work that he had a big problem. Dupay said he feared for his life. It just wasn't like him at all. He was not a paranoid person by nature. He said he was afraid for his life, but he never said why, said one associate, who requested anonymity because of his managerial position in the post office. Dupay's mother-in-law, Mary Heaton, told me in 1981, it was all so strange, so unlike him. There was no history of mental or physical problems. He didn't gamble. The marriage was fine, and he lived for his family. In July and August, he began to act fearful and edgy, but he wouldn't say why. There was perhaps a strong clue contained in a letter sent to the Gannett, Westchester, Rockland newspapers after I began publishing articles there about the conspiracy. The writer, who was a neighborhood resident on Dupay's route, said one day in July, he told me, sometimes a mailman learns things about the people on his route he'd be better off not knowing, and he sees things he'd be better off not seeing. Dupay, the writer added, did not explain what he meant.
That's exactly what I was pointing out about the neighborhood and knowing good and also bad people.
Right.
And I don't like the anonymity of the managerial position, the man with the manager's position at the post office. What has he got to worry about? There's been a death. He should speak up.
Well, I can understand it, Eric, because I mean, and even Tracey, I can understand it because we were dealing with the Son of Sam case. You know, people were rightly paranoid, most likely, especially right after the incident, right after the arrest. So I always try to remember, like, we got to look at these things in context to the times of which they're in. We can't like Monday morning quarterback a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see that as problematic as maybe you guys do. But again, that's just my opinion on that.
I respect you.
Okay, so on September 20th at about 5:30, now, Tracey, I'm very sorry to read this. Dupay and Lori were bathing their two young daughters. Dupay excused himself, saying he was going to the basement to bring up something for the girls. At the bottom of the stairs, Dupay wrote a brief note. He then took a shotgun and killed himself. It was only later we learned from his friends at work that he was afraid for his life, Mary Heaton said. In late August, about 2 weeks after Berkowitz's arrest, Dupay drew very close to Lori and the girls, closer than usual. He took them on a fishing trip then. He usually went on those vacations without them. Tracey, do you remember those fishing trips, or were you just too young?
I was too young.
Too young. Did Noelle ever talk to you about them? Or that fishing trip?
I just saw the pictures of her with that and the fish.
Wow. Okay. So Dupay apparently didn't want to leave his family alone. In his suicide note, he left another clue to his dilemma. Remember that day at Glen Island with the Italian family? I think it's their doing. Now, Tracey, you have seen that note, correct?
Yes.
Did it say that?
Yes.
Did it say that in that exact way, or is this a paraphrase of it?
No, that's exactly the way it was put in the letter.
That's exactly the way it was put. And any conversations amongst the family about Glen Island, like what, trying to figure out what that was all about?
When I read the letter, I was with my mom because I convinced her that I was old enough to read it and wanted to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe what I was reading about the Glen Island. I was like, what's this place? And then I don't remember the conversation after that. Like I said, my mom didn't really want to talk about it too much, but she was open to letting me see the letter.
And so you never found out any more of the story about Glen Island or anything like that?
No.
But in the past show, he has an argument with the Italian family, and you questioned Manny, what importance could it have to put it in the letter that they argued over a picnic grill?
It doesn't make sense to me that would be the reason why a family man such as Andrew Dupay would do something like he did. It just doesn't make sense. It does make intuitive sense to me that there was something that he saw on his route. That makes total sense to me, considering where he was living. and what he could have seen. He could have seen Berkowitz, right? He could have seen whoever was helping Berkowitz, if Berkowitz had help. He absolutely could have seen those things. So Glen Island is a Westchester County park located on the shore of Long Island Sound in New Rochelle. In June, 3 months before his death, Dupay, Lori, and the children were in a picnic area where grills were provided for public use. An Italian family was gathered in the grove at the same time, and they and Dupay got into an argument over who had first rights to a particular grill. It was a minor argument and it was forgotten, said Mary Heaton. I can't believe he thought it went back to that. Indeed, it stretches plausibility to think that Dupay's life was mysteriously threatened by people he didn't even know a month and longer after a verbal spat about a barbecue. I agree with Maury Terry there. It's possible Dupay believed this was the source of the threats, but not likely. A more revealing insight was contained in that letter from the neighbor on his mail route, a route Dupay strode daily to 35 Pine Street, Wicker Street, and 316 Warburton Avenue. That note, quoting Dupay's own words, related that something he'd seen or learned along his rounds had frightened him, and the timing of all these events, so proximate to Berkowitz's arrest, is also telling. Then there was yet another letter mailed to me. I'd have contacted the Yonkers police with the information I have, but I think you know as well as I, it would have been another mistake, considering the force employs 2 members of the Carr family, Sister Wheat and brother-in-law John McCabe, then Wheat's husband. The mailman, Andrew, I forget his surname, knew them, the Carrs and Berkowitz, and this was never brought out. He committed a suicide a few years ago after a meeting with an unnamed man in the Pelham Bay Park area of the Bronx. He said they were threatening him. The they is unknown, and were going to get his family. Shortly after, she found him dead of a bullet wound.
Who said that? Right.
Yeah, this doesn't even make sense. Hold on. Shortly after that, she found him dead of a bullet wound. Who's the she that they're talking about? There's like no context in here.
Yeah, and also bullet wound. They say he got, in this one, it says he got a rifle.
Well, right. Wait.
A shotgun is more than just a bullet wound.
Exactly. So, all right, some contradictions right in the official, in this narrative right here. The unnamed man Dupay was said to have met with in the Bronx remains unidentified. The letter writer had nothing more to offer about that incident. Dupay's co-workers were aware that he feared for his own life, but he hadn't mentioned threats were also directed at his family, as stated in the letter. But Dupay's actions prior to his death lend credence to that statement. He took them away on a fishing vacation when he usually went without them. Now, Tracey, we have you here. Is that true? Did he usually go away without you guys, or did he bring you guys regularly on fishing trips?
No, he went by himself.
He went by himself. Okay, so that's confirmed. All right, so we've confirmed that tidbit from the Ultimate Evil.
Did he have a friend he went on the fishing trip with? Because sometimes one says, I go by myself, but they have pals that they go with, or one pal, and the family stays home. And that's what they mean by myself.
There was a couple of friends that used to come by, 2 gentlemen. I think, I'm not sure if one was a co-worker, and they might have gone. I'm really not sure who he went with.
Do you remember any of their names?
Yes. One was Lenny.
And what?
The other,
Lenny.
Yes.
Don't get too excited. It's not Lenny Dapolito, Eric.
No, I don't mean that. I thought she had said money.
Oh, Lenny. No, Lenny.
No, Lenny. Lenny, and then the other one, I think, was Ed. I don't know his last name.
Was there, did he have a friend named Donald?
He could have. I'm not sure about
Donald. Okay, because we're gonna see a Donald later on in today's show. So I just wanted to see if that name was familiar. We do have his last name, but let's just leave it there because maybe when.
Okay, and what waters did he fish in?
Well, I know we probably spent time in Cape Cod because my grandparents had a house there. And one of the pictures, he's with Noelle when she was little and fish. It looked like my grandparents' fence that they had.
Is that one of the pictures that we have here that we're going to show soon?
I believe so, yes.
Perfect. Awesome.
So he would go on a fishing vacation or trip up to Massachusetts.
It could be, yeah. He could have been local too. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But I know my grandfather did have a boat.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. So he withheld telling his wife about any threats at all, and in the final moments of his life when he was bathing his two daughters, hardly the impetus for immediate suicide. But it is reasonable to suggest that being with them and his wife in that intimate, loving situation may have overwhelmed him with a very real dread that something might imminently happen to them, and he took his own life to protect them. You know, if that's true, we're sitting with a potential potential victim of this whole affair called Son of Sam. If this is true, Eric, right? We're
Yeah.
now joined by Tracey, who could have been harmed if
Yeah.
this is all true. Right.
I can accept what you're putting forth as a conjecture because, forgive me if I mention suicide and death, Tracey. That this is not to make but suicide is not one dimensional. There are many different ways it takes place. We don't know what's going on in a person's mind. And the thing I would like to know is the time span. How much time from upstairs bathing you and your sister Noelle with your mom, little babies, enjoying the life they gave birth to, and going downstairs to the basement, how much time did your mother ever say, or forensics ever say, passed for him to write the suicide note?
No, nothing was said that I know of.
So yeah, and of course, Tracey, we did ask about police reports of the incident, and we were told, as Yonkers always tells us, that anything pre-1980 was destroyed in a flood. That can't be true because we do have files pre-1980 from Yonkers Police Department. But anyway, that's what they told us.
And Manny, when you say cult, you know what's eerie? And I would, Andrew's not with us, of course, but your mother, Tracey, when she was a nurse at St. John's Hospital, heard the cult activity.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you see what I mean, Manny and Tracey, this connection. She heard the cult activity. She's not the only one. And
no, everybody knew what was going on in Untermeyer back then.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering, and then I also wonder, when he changed and he feared for his life, he saw something that perhaps frightened him, someone said, and shocked him, really. It's more than fright. But could he have, as a friendly person of the neighborhood postman, perhaps dropped something off at someone's house as a favor a few times or once, and it wasn't actually properly posted? They said, hey, that's where you deliver. Do you mind if you take this letter or this note for me there and drop it off with the mail?
What are you trying to get at here? That he was a courier?
Yeah, but not that he knew what he was delivering.
Right. He was being used as a courier.
Yeah. They not that he was a courier on a daily basis, but it could have happened one or two or three times, and then suddenly he realizes something.
Right. I mean, again, that's like book club just said, wondering leads to conspiracy theories. Now, I don't fully agree with that because we do need to wonder as true crime enthusiasts and as researchers.
I don't think it leads to conspiracy theories because I don't have a conspiracy theory. I don't even have a theory without conspiracy.
But I do understand book club's point. Ultimate point that he's trying to make, because we do try to stay away from speculation, but it's possible, but we'll never know, of course. So that's just something that is kind of an exercise in futility in a sense.
I want to emphasize, though, I wasn't saying that he was participating in anything criminal.
No, of course we didn't get that, but and it's a valid point to bring up. And hey, Eric, later on in the show, I'm going to bring up a major speculation that's gonna totally blow people's minds. But so I'm going to be totally guilty of it as well. Not that that's kind of the wrong term to use, but you got my point. Like, if he was a courier, we'll just never know. So, All right. Why Dupay didn't report the threats to police is unknown. He may have believed police protection would be inadequate or of short duration. It may have been for a more sinister reason. Now, I think Maury is being very, very unfair to the Yonkers Police Department here. There's no indication that I've ever gotten from any YPD member, former or current, that they had any interest in covering up the Son of Sam case for any nefarious reason, or sinister reason, I should say.
Especially since Maury subsequently, after the publication of the book, trusted the Yonkers police in 1996 when they reopened the case.
Correct. Although the story of that can be a show in and of itself. So what could Andrew Dupay have seen or learned on his mail route to put him in such jeopardy, to convince him to take the threat so seriously that he would take his life rather than attempt to resolve the situation in another way? It will be remembered that threatening letters were flying all over that neighborhood that spring and summer, sent through the mail and delivered by Dupay, and perhaps other correspondence, which identified the senders, was also received. It is also possible that Dupay observed culpable people coming and going from a particular residence or saw Berkowitz in their company. Also, in 1983, a human skull, that of an unidentified elderly male, would be found in a wooded area across the street from the Dupay's house. Tracey, do you remember that incident?
No.
So in 1983, how old were you? Not to give away your age. I know it's very rude.
Okay.
Give me an approximate age.
83. Oh God, I don't know.
If you were 3 years old in 77, you would have been about 9 years old.
About 9 or 10.
9.
Yeah, I was born in 73, so I was 10. So we're about the same age. So so you would have been fully conscious. You would have been fully aware of what was going on in your neighborhood. You do remember this happening? Them finding a skull, talking about finding a skull, rumors, anything like that?
No.
All right. So again, just Tracey's recollection. She could be right, she could be wrong, but according to Tracey, she didn't have any record of this at all, the human skull. And even if a human skull was found, this again is like Maury trying to connect everything back to this one incident, in my opinion, with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. But the skull's presence at the site would have been dated to the approximate time of Dupay's death. So that's how he gets away with it, right? By putting that sentence in. Its origins would remain unknown, but it may have been stolen from a cemetery and used in rituals. All right. So, but at this point, no one knows what or who it was that Andrew Dupay encountered on his postal route. Someday the answer may be found. In the meantime, a widow and children are left to wonder why he died. And that is also very true, Tracey, because to this day, you're struggling with this question of why.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that piece there, Maury wrote quite well, objectively speaking.
Objectively speaking. However, I do have a major thing that I'm going to bring up to throw a monkey wrench into this later on. Okay.
I mean, what we could do, if it was ever possible, was to kind of get a anographic report of
what does that mean?
Anography means they have all the residencies and people living in an area. In other words, I look up where you lived your whole life and who lived on the street in these years. And find out who every single person who lived on his mail route.
Right, that would be great. Now, here's a question I think is a good one. Andrew Dupay's mail route was presumably in morning or daylight. Now, Tracey, do you know that? Do you know your dad's work schedule? I mean, I know you were 3 years old, but did you ever hear that he worked at night? Did he work during the day, the morning?
No, I don't know.
You don't know which one he worked at, okay. So if it's possible to find out from Noel, maybe find out. Surely any Berkowitz dark deeds on shooting or lighting fires was mostly at night when dark as opposed to broad daylight. No, Joe, actually you are, unfortunately, my friend, you are incorrect. He shot Harvey the dog, Harvey Carr. He shot at 9:21 in the morning. So he was out there doing his thing in the early morning as well.
And according to a letter he wrote to Abrahamson, it's quite frightening. I think it was in the daytime. He was in the brush waiting to shoot with his rifle Sam Carr.
Well, that was the same incident. I think he said that he wanted to shoot Sam and instead Sam didn't come out, so he shot the
That's
dog
right. Yeah,
instead.
right.
Right. So he was perfectly willing to shoot, to commit crimes in his own neighborhood in the broad daylight. All right. So Tracey, here is where I think we are gonna have some poignancy and of course, hopefully some good memories as well. The Dupay photos. So of course, first things first, thank you so much, Tracey, for taking the time to scan these and send them to me,
Sure.
because we all benefit from this. Because, one of the things that we've been doing, and I think Eric will agree, is that we've been hardcore into the crimes lately. We've been hardcore into the psychology behind the crimes. But one thing that has been lost in this whole mix is, of course, the whole human stories again. The whole this story at its base dealt with people who were living their lives in a neighborhood and who were all brought into this or not, right, by these weird circumstances that Berkowitz put into play. And so it's the human aspect of this story that I think gets lost. I think this was one of the most important things about the Queen's DA dump, which was that it humanized a lot of these people whose up until this point we had only seen their names in a book. So I am extremely happy to be the first person in history to present the Dupay photos, especially with the honor with Tracey Dupay, who can tell us what these are all about. And then after we do this, we are going to, I think Noelle's in the audience, Tracey.
Yeah, she said that I think she was saying her father walked the route.
Oh, he walked the route. Hold
Yeah,
on. Walked the route. But Noelle, what? Oh, yes, I think he worked the day shift. All right. This is great. Okay. This is the wonderful thing about our video series and everyone rallying around it. We are getting the best information and the most accurate information from the direct people involved. So let's go through these photos, Tracey, one by one, and you can just kind of tell us what we're seeing and tell us who's in the photographs. Now, I'd want to add to the audience that these are vintage photographs, so don't expect crystal clarity here like you would in a modern photograph, but there's something special about these photos, and there's about a dozen of them. So here's the first one. So what are we seeing here, Trace?
Okay, that's my mom holding me as an infant, and that's my dad with Noelle.
And that's your dad with Noelle. And is this in Yonkers?
I think that's my grandparents' house, because there's a picture on the wall, and I remember that hanging mostly in their house. So we're probably over their house for maybe a holiday or something.
Mm-hmm. And style and shirt your dad's wearing. I love the polyester look.
Yeah.
Killer. My father had the same exact glasses. So this is a great picture. And you could really tell in this photograph that your dad is extremely proud of Noelle and that whole notion of him being a family man. You can just see it right here. I mean, this was a beautiful family. Eric, any opinions, Eric? Any thoughts?
I can't speak. It's making me very sad, because I can imagine what they were like. It made me think of at my grandparents' home. She mentioned with my mother and father sitting in between them. The whole innocence of life, never imagining what could happen. It just makes me sad. It's rather poignant.
Right. I agree with you 100%. So what's this, Tracey?
We're at the beach, and my dad buried us in the sand.
Your dad buried you in the sand. Now, who's who here? Is this Noelle here on the left?
Right. And then I'm on the right.
Okay. And so, yeah. And where is this? Is this
that I think could be, I don't know, Cape Cod, I think.
Cape Cod?
Because I have pictures of my grandparents there too.
Uh-huh. So Tracey and Noelle being buried in sand by their dad.
And the grandparents at Cape Cod were your mother's parents or your father's?
My mom's.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what are we seeing here?
Okay, it's hard to see him, but
here is
we're
your
looking
dad.
we're looking like a picnic area.
Uh-huh.
So Noelle and I were trying to figure it out where we were, but we couldn't. So I don't know if it was Yonkers or somewhere else.
Uh-huh. But then here's your father, of
Yeah,
course.
and then me, and then Noel.
Cool. I like this photograph. I particularly like you in this photograph, Tracey.
Yeah.
You just look to be so pensive and thoughtful, happy and satisfied at the same time. So what are we
Yeah.
seeing here?
It looks like we're at a zoo and we're petting the animals.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, look at Andrew here. I mean, this is giving us much more of a sense of this gentleman as family man, as loving family man that we could ever get out of the pages of a book. Very, very sweet. All right, so let's orient our eyes. We got a little flash thing going here. I like that photograph.
Me too. This is my favorite. That's Noel to the left, and I'm right near my dad.
So you're being held here. You're kind of in your dad's arms here. God, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he just looks like he's content, happy at home with his family. Not a kind of guy who seems that would want to go out and party and be away from his people. I mean, am I getting that impression correct?
Yes.
All right. So where's this now?
That's Yonkers.
This is Yonkers.
Yes.
Now 15 Lincoln Terrace, because those houses are huge there. Did you guys own that entire house, or did you rent an apartment within that house?
Actually, my mom's mom owned it.
Oh, okay, right.
And then the family lived in there. It was like, I think 4 levels or 3 levels
Right.
apartment.
It's a
Because
very
we were
big.
on the top and he went down to the basement. So it's pretty far down.
Yeah, at least 3 to 4 stories. I'm gonna go take a video of the house very, very soon.
I remember you telling us in the former show about moving there and that it had been in the family.
Yes.
So now, what's the deal here with the change? Is this change in this water 5-gallon?
Yeah, we had that for many years. They just put their change in there, and then my mom had it. And actually, she opened it up to send me on a trip when I was in middle school to Massachusetts.
Oh, no kidding! Really?
Yeah, yeah, they had it that long.
This probably could hold probably
Oh, yeah.
$1,000. Yeah, easily $1,000 if you're because I used to bring like to the Coinstar just a jar, and it would often equal up to $100. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So we had that for many, many years.
And this is the Lincoln Terrace apartment.
Yes.
And look, you guys even had plants. You liked plants. I mean, this was like I wish I was in your family, actually. I love this photograph.
Yeah, that's his birthday.
That's his birthday. Oh, well, I guess that makes sense with all the candles. I thought this was maybe who's this?
Noel.
That's Noel.
That's before me.
This was before you were born.
Yeah.
Okay. So Andrew's younger here, and Noel just looks so damn cute here, just so happy.
Yeah.
I wish Noel could join us on here. I know she's in the chat, but boy, it'd be great to have her call in.
It's before 1974.
Yes.
Right.
And then that's him burying us in the sand.
Right. The same time as before. Right. The same trip as before.
Yes.
So he was, in good shape, well built, looked healthy. I'm just trying to think, like, could anything have gone wrong with his health? But seemed like he was like in perfectly good health.
Yeah. That's why it seems so bizarre to me. And there, if you look at this picture,
the whole thing is bizarre.
Yeah, he's wearing his pants from the Postal Service.
Oh man, the gray pants from the Postal Service. Yeah, yeah. And look at the stripe. And then what's going on here? I see a bunny rabbit. Tracey, can you hear me? I think we lost Tracey again.
And she's rearranging something. I see her hand moving.
Okay. So hopefully we'll get Tracey back in a second. Tracey's calling in from.
I think my volume.
Well, I don't want to tell her what her.
Can you hear me?
There you are. You're good now. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, I have to go back.
All right. Tracey, can you hear us? Eric, do me a favor and please private message her. All right, she's going back. She's going to come back. So where Tracey's calling in from, there must be some weather event or something. I'm not quite sure. But we'll wait for her to come back in. Here she comes. There she goes. Hey, Trace, can you hear us now?
Yeah, so sorry about that. A call came
No,
in.
No,
I should have
no
done it on
problem.
the computer.
No problem. No problem. So we're just reading some of the quotes from the audience. For Father Andrew to give up his life with such beautiful children at the best ages for any proud dad to be a parent, there must be more to this than just his own suicide. Doesn't make sense. Now, Tracey, you had a suspicion that possibly he was did not kill himself, but was in fact murdered. This was just a suspicion of yours, correct? But you have
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I had asked you, and I said, I'm asking this with compassion, not to disturb you. When I guessed it in on the last show, I said, did you ever think it was murder? And you actually said yes. And you, Manny, that really affected you. That it could have been murder.
Well, I mean, look, with this case, if this case is involved, if Andrew Dupay is involved in the Son of Sam case, then you have to keep your mind open, of course. Totally. Let's see what Paul Hart has to say. I feel DB got info on who lived at the Carr's house and Neto's house by physically going to those houses and checking out their mail. Once he got their names, he could look them up in the phone book. Yeah, it's definitely possible. We're going to go through what Berkowitz did to find his natural birth mother, and you guys are going to be shocked. This guy was a master at looking at phone books, cross-referencing names, researching old addresses. He really was very adept at that. All right, so let's carry on with the pictures. We have one more, I believe, and this picture was this next picture is the one that Mike Lorenzo called me up and said he's going to have nightmares for the rest of his life. Oh no, sorry, wrong picture. Duh. I apologize. I thought we were going to get to the stuffed animal photograph.
Oh.
So definitely not this photo. Duh. So apologies for that. My timing was wrong. So is this you?
No, I believe that's Noel.
This is Noel. Okay, so these photographs span quite a few years then. All right, so here's Andrew sleeping with Noel. And just the main takeaway that I'm getting out of these photographs is of a very loving family man. Just very, very tragic. So what are we seeing here?
He's reading the newspaper with Noel.
He's reading the newspaper with Noel, and this is obviously in Yonkers. Here we see the Herald Statesman. Good-looking guy. Cool hairstyle. Very well built.
That photograph does him a lot of justice.
Yeah, it does.
Compared to, he looks younger there than the high school photograph.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We showed that in the first show. Yeah, your dad's high school photograph.
Oh yeah.
I even commented. I think I said, people in high school look so much older back then.
Yeah.
I look at my dad's.
What post office did he work at? Is there more? What was the specific post office? The area of the post office where he lived? Did it have a name? The road of the post office where he worked?
Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't look that up. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. No, of course not.
So Paul's asking, what's the headline on the paper? Reindeer.
Yeah.
Draws. Passe. Rainbow drawing. Reindeer. I don't know. Rainbow drawing passe for this. I'm sure, Paul, if you go on the Fulton site, you can find, just type in reindeer draw or something. Passe. Maybe you can find this article. Let's just, so if this is Noel, what year was she born? 71?
Yes.
So this would be 1971, this newspaper.
Yes.
At least we can. Okay, so I think actually the reason why I got this wrong was because I had shown this twice. and that's why I accidentally put this photograph in twice.
Mhm.
So this is the following photograph is the one that's giving Mike Lorenzo nightmares and me as well. It's freaking me out. It's freaking.
It's a
That
good
is
picture, but yeah,
Let
that's
me
with the
tell you
bunny.
something. Let me tell you something. That is one scary looking
Bunny.
stuffed animal.
Well, the eye.
Yeah.
But you know, it might be. You know what a puka is in Celtic mythology? It's a large rabbit that appears to somebody like a spirit in the form of a rabbit.
Oh.
I remember always going to Puerto Rico as a youth, and my mom grew up there, and so we would always stay at her childhood home, and she had a whole bunch of old stuffed animals. Now we're going back to the 40s and 50s, because my mom was born in the 30s, and they were scary as hell, those old toys. I'm telling you, there was something about those old toys. They like put a fright in me.
And
But
they
so
were made well by hand.
yeah, that's true. They were made very well. So what are we seeing here now? Who are we seeing?
That's Noel.
That's Noel. And who's this gentleman here?
That's my dad.
That can't be your dad.
Yeah, that's my dad.
Wait a second. Are you sure it's not your grandfather?
Nope.
Because this looks like an older gentleman, but maybe it's just the graininess of the photograph.
It looks like the man that I said, gee, he looks younger than the high school photograph.
Hold on.
But
that one here.
He's a bit thinner.
Yeah,
here.
I can see it. I can see it. But I thought that was maybe Andrew's, maybe your father, maybe your grandfather, because it looks kind of like an older gentleman here.
His face is fuller here.
Yeah. All right. So that is so wait, this is Noel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So all right. So
Noel tells us 2 years later. I think Noel is trying to say that photo with the large rabbit is 2 years later than the one that where I said he looks younger than the high school photo.
Right, because Noel here is like a very, very young, almost newborn infant. And here, Noel is clearly at least, 2 years old.
Well, maybe she's saying probably Tracey.
Oh,
wait. So she's saying that this is Tracey.
Yeah, she says probably Tracey.
Oh, right. Noel is saying because she was born in February, and Noel does say probably Tracey. All right.
Okay.
So
sorry.
listen. So these were the photographs, and of course, Tracey, if you ever come across any more, please let us know. We'd love to see them.
May I ask Noel a question? Noel, do you ever have that same thought as your sister Tracey, that perhaps your dad didn't commit suicide?
Good question. And I'm sure Noel will answer in the chat.
And did she find the suicide note? She was looking for it last March.
Yeah, whatever happened with that?
Hello, Noel.
Tracey, not to put you on the spot. So Noel said, yes, I do.
At times I do.
Did you ever find that letter, Tracey?
I didn't. And my sister didn't have a chance to look at that time.
She hasn't found it yet, she said.
Because, if there's any possibility of finding it, that would be huge for the Son of Sam world, because, again, this is one of the enduring mysteries. What happened to Andrew Dupay?
Right.
So seeing that letter would go. I mean, I know we have the text of it, but just seeing it would be very, very helpful. And
it would even be more healing if it was public, because keeping something like that private in the corner of a room or a box, it becomes a white elephant.
Yeah.
True, Eric, but everyone has their comfort levels. So we're just gonna say if you find it and if you're comfortable, that'd be great to share for the historical record for sure. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to pivot to the files that are in the Queen's DA material that are all under the heading Maury Terry notes, Maury Terry files. These all came out of Maury Terry's personal files that the Queen's DA has released. and they don't all deal with Andrew Dupay, but these pages do deal with him in some way. And there's really nothing majorly new in this stuff. It's just an insight into, well, the genesis of the information that got into the book. So it's always good to see what Maury was working with before this is 1980. This is 7 years before the printing of the book. So it's always instructive for us as researchers to see what he was working with, so we can hopefully make some decisions on our own here, like what was going on. So Tracey, again, anything you want to comment on, and of course I'll ask you questions as well, but please speak up whenever you see something.
Sure.
So Tom, this is going to Tom, the Queen's DA, okay? Tom McCarthy, copy of McCarthy letter. I received another, so this is Maury writing. I received another anonymous letter yesterday. It appears to relate to Andrew Dupay, Donald, Yellow Volkswagen, Savage, mailman letter, but it is not from the same source. However, we apparently have another dead mailman on our hands. Now, quickly, Donald Savage, Tracey, does that name mean anything to you?
No.
Noel, if anything, I just got to get rid of this guy here.
And where was this other mailman? Where did he lose his life? When was he deceased?
Well, the anonymous letter talks about this other mailman having a yellow Volkswagen and living in the same area. But I don't want to dive too deeply into that because quite a bit of it has nothing to do with seemingly with Andrew. But let's just see how that goes. So Noel wrote no. Okay. All right. So the letter states, several years ago, the writer had a disturbing conversation with the local mailman near Warburton, Cars, etc., who said in a worried, apprehensive way. So this is your dad now. A mailman learns more than anybody else about the people on his route, sometimes too much. Sometimes he gets to know more than he should, more than he's supposed to know, things he doesn't want to know. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is this is a different quote that's than is in the Ultimate Evil. And they're both in quotes, so there was some journalistic chicanery happening there. But writer says mailman was very nervous and worried in this conversation and would not amplify on what he had learned. Now, Tracey, you were 3 when this all happened, so you didn't get to know your father even as a teenager or as an adult. But was your dad a quiet guy? Did he hold things in? Did you ever hear of that character trait about your dad? He just wouldn't talk much?
No, he seemed really friendly from what I remember.
Right. Okay. Writer says mailman was very nervous and worried in this conversation and would not amplify on what he had learned. The mailman committed apparent suicide in his garage 2 months later. Writer says mailman's name was, quote, Ray. Okay, so that does not sound like your dad, but later on, but the rest of it does sound like your father. Yeah. Writer also reports that a Yonkers cop lived on this route. Okay, this we don't need to get into because this is all like about a Yonkers cop who lived on the route. So anyway, the whole story rings a familiar bell with the death of the allegedly threatened mailman, Andrew Dupay. Could Ray and Dupay be one and the same? Or do we have still another mailman apparently killing himself because of something he saw or heard delivering mail in that neighborhood? Dupay lived 1 block from Burke and Carr and also delivered mail to 35 Pine. Writer says Dupay knew the Carrs. Now, of course, that means nothing to me now because we know that the Carrs were not involved in Son of Sam. So, a lot of this stuff we can sort of look at now with our knowledge and say, okay, well, who cares if he knew the Carrs? Doesn't mean anything. Add to this information I received about yet another suicide mailman named Foley. Does that name sound familiar to you at all, Tracey? Foley?
No.
No. If you will recall, Donald Savage, also mentioned in the Dupay letter, was also a mailman in Yonkers. He had a yellow VW and was turned in as an SOS suspect after the Moskowitz murder. He had also been allegedly suspended for spraying mace on dogs and had lived in California in 74, 75. Perry, right? So here we see Maury Terry just totally speculating and bringing things into it. Anyway, the rest of this has nothing to do with your dad. Here is
True what happened to Savage, though? He was suspended, and did Savage lose his life?
well, Savage said that he was another suicide. Maury said Savage was another suicide.
So we have three. One not named, Savage, and Mr. Dupay.
Well, I think the two. No, Savage. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. Foley was the other suicide. Savage, I don't know exactly what's going on here with Savage.
Mm-hmm.
Savage is a name that I've heard before, but I never really looked into. And maybe we should look into this guy a little bit more.
Mm.
I talked to a source at the post office, a supervisor in charge of the routes. He told me that he had heard from another carrier that Dupay's life had allegedly been threatened. He said the other carrier, he believes, had been told this by Dupay's wife. All right. So now, Tracey, this brings your mom into it. Now, your mom is no longer with us, correct?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, unfortunately. But it says here that your mom knew of another letter carrier that heard about this threat. Anything in your life, do you remember this? Did your mom ever talk to you about this? I know you said no before, but you never know.
No.
She had never mentioned anything about speaking to another letter carrier or these allegations that he was fearful of his life. Nothing.
No.
Okay. He said that Ray and Dupay are apparently the same person, as no other mailman committed suicide except Edmund Foley a few years before that in South Yonkers. So Foley committed suicide a few years before that, Eric. So it looks like we can take him out of the equation.
Yeah, he seems to be
nothing to do with it, right?
Postman, yeah. Now about another letter carrier knowing of your father's fear for his life. That is quite possible, Manny and Tracey, because the man in the managerial position at the post office,
right,
wanted to remain anonymous. So it is possible that there's talk at the post office and say, hey, something's happened with Andy. What?
Absolutely. And I think that we should put out the call to try to find whoever was working at the post office at the time. Not going to be easy, so no one get any expectations, but we have worked miracles before on this video series, so you never know. Okay. He said that Dupay delivered the mail to the car home. Dupay's wife had already advised us that he had delivered to 35 Pine as well. He said Dupay would have been the guy on Philippe's Terrace, as that street, Warburton, etc., were part of his usual route. He says Dupay was a nice guy, good family man with no apparent problems until about 2-3 weeks before his death, when he began to act noticeably distressed, nervous, and changed. Donald Savage, he says, is now in his late 20s and so Savage, this is all about Savage. Several things are clear. One writer quotes Dupay himself as being frightened about something he learned on his route before DB's arrest. Another writer says Dupay knew the cars and was threatened by a man at a meeting in Pelham Bay Park. Dupay's wife fell apart when asked if he had been threatened. Dupay died a month after DB's arrest. So here it's saying that your mom, I think what this is intimating is that your mom knew something about him being threatened, and that when she was asked about it, it freaked her out.
When did she fall apart, though? Before the death or after?
After. Had to be after. Because no one saw this coming, Eric. Well, except for maybe people at the post office. I really wish that your mom had been more open with you, Tracey, because, boy, it sounds like reading this that she might have known quite a lot.
Yes.
Tracey and Noel, I want to get back to, did your mother ever speak to you or others when you were older about your dad's death and the whole cult milieu in Yonkers?
Not that I recall.
Did you guys ever hear of this whole cult theory growing up in Yonkers about Son of Sam?
No, just a happy childhood until this happened.
Right. No, but after, I'm talking about after this happened and after, like in the 80s when you were still living there, several years had passed. Did you hear rumors in the neighborhood about a cult involved in Son of Sam or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
And I'm curious about that thing. Did it say Andrew Dupay, your dad, was in Pelham Bay Park? Did the end of
It
that
did
letter
say
say?
it did say that. Did your dad go to Pelham Bay Park regularly, or was that a known place for him to go, Tracey?
I'm not sure.
I'd like to know where that information came from, though.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
me
Well,
too.
I have my thoughts on this, which I'm going to share with you guys in the audience when we're done. And it's going to be a bombshell, and I'm going to preface it by saying that it's just my speculation. Okay, but yeah, I think you guys are going to like this in the
A few
audience.
Terry heads will be decapitated. No
I
way.
think so. I
want
think
Terry
so. But
head. Terry
let's not
body without a
let's,
head.
let's not say anything. Let's not even give them any hints.
All right.
So here is so here again is more stuff. Again, more notes from the Queen's DA stuff. My postal source did a recheck on the records. He absolutely confirms that Andrew Dupay delivered to both the Carr and Berkowitz Glassman homes. Dupay's wife further confirmed this. All right, so that's that. Now, Andrew Dupay Jr. So this is, again, more notes. Was a mailman. He lived half a block. He used a gun. Happened in his home on Lincoln Terrace. According to the letter I got, Andrew killed himself after a meeting at Pelham Bay Park at which he was threatened about the SOS case. This is pretty stark right here, Eric and Tracey. This is like
it's curious. And then also a gun. You know, my mind would say revolver, pistol, rifle, shotgun.
Right, because it says shotgun in the Ultimate Evil, and here it just says gun.
Or does it say rifle? I think he says rifle in the Ultimate.
No, it said shotgun. Here, it's like as Maury writes these notes to the Queen's DA, it gets more and more sure of himself, right? Like it just said he was threatened about the SOS case. There's no indication that ever happened.
No,
Okay?
and how does he know that he was threatened about the Son of Sam case?
Well,
Right.
it's all coming from an anonymous letter, which we're going to look at after this page here. We're going to look at the anonymous letter. So Andrew, the letter writer, says knew Burke and knew the Carrs. A phone call was placed to Andrew's wife recently. She was just fine in the conversation until a question was asked. The question was, your husband threatened? She then fell apart. So Maury must have asked her that. Did your mom, Tracey, ever say that she spoke to anybody in relation to this? Like authors or even Maury Terry himself?
No.
She never mentioned it, or it never happened?
She never mentioned it.
Okay. So it sounds like you're
quite
go ahead.
possible that with love for you and your sister Noelle, she may not have ever wanted this to be a constant narrative within your lives. And she may not have just told you. It could have happened, Manny, and she didn't want her children to know it.
I can see that, especially since Noelle and especially Tracey was 3 years old. I mean, she was very young, and it's possible, although it's not. I don't think that that's the case. But at 3, it's possible you can move on from something like this and not even remember, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case with Tracey, because Tracey, tell the audience again what happened that morning when you were walking out of your house. What did you see?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, when we're walking with my mom's friends after it happened down the street, and I looked up to the sky and I saw angels holding my dad underneath his arms. And it's like he didn't want to go, but I saw them taking him to heaven.
Oh my
God. I see that as beautiful and symbolically, because metaphysics, mysticism, I have studied, and not New Age, more than a few, less than many. It almost makes me think, because the angels were carrying him away, not that God doesn't have compassion for those who commit suicide. A lot of rotten people who are very religious have no compassion for somebody who commits suicide. But it's almost as if they were comforting him from having been murdered.
Right. That's what I was thinking when she said that, especially the fact that she said that he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
That is a major, major image. Wow. I cannot. I mean, and I believe in that stuff. I mean, I really do.
I believe it. I believe it. Well, somebody says all mysticism is New Age. No, it's.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Let me tell you something that happened to me. I mean, this is a total aside, but my abuelita, my grandmother, she died at 104 years old, and we're not even sure what age she was, because in Puerto Rico in those years they didn't have accurate birth certificates. She could have been 110. She was at least 104. She lasted, and I'll never forget the morning she died. She died at, like, I don't know, in the middle of the night in her sleep peacefully. At like 6 in the morning in New York, I got this crazy dream where I saw my abuelita's life in my dream from her childhood to her death. I woke up, I said, my abuelita has just died. And then not 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and it was my dad saying, we got to go to Puerto Rico. Your grandmother just died. So these things have happened. You know, I saw my grandfather looking down on me one night when I was a child. He was long gone. And I remember waking up, seeing this apparition staring down at me, smiling, and I got scared S-less, and I covered myself up for the rest of the night. But so I totally believe that what Tracey saw was real. Absolutely. Especially as a child, because children are more open to this stuff. You know, they're not filled yet with the poisons of society.
Yeah, your conscious mind is still pure.
Correct.
You're still kind of in a quasi Adam and Eve state before being kicked out of the Garden of Paradise. There's a purity there.
Exactly. All right, so let's finish this up. Her father came on the line. So this is your grandfather now, Tracey.
Yes.
And he said, why are you dragging us into this thing now? We don't want to get involved in it. Okay, so now that begs the question, Tracey. Did you ever speak to your grandparents about this? Did your grandparents ever tell you anything?
No, but that sounds like what something my grandfather would say. He was very protective of my mom and my grandmother and us. So I can see him definitely saying something like that.
Okay. Andrew, it seems, not only lived near our friends, meaning the Carrs and the Berkowitzes, he was also the mailman for 35 Pine. His wife's actions when that question was put to her were a confirmation. See, this is where Maury loses the plot for me. A confirmation, right? She just suddenly collapsed and started crying on that question. She'd been fine before that. We've also been told that another mailman named Foley also committed suicide around this time. We are trying to nail that down. Letter writer also implicated one other mailman, Donald Savage, who lived in California. Okay, so and anyway, the rest of this is like Maury Terry trying to totally. I mean, look at this stuff. Occult note, the crossword dictionary, Scottish witch for word for witch, Carlene, job. I mean, this guy's losing the plot here.
Well, I think he contradicts the time of the suicide or death of Foley.
Of Foley, exactly, right? Because in the
pages back that it was a few years before,
several years prior, correct.
And now he says around the same time, 1977.
Exactly. Now here is the anonymous letter. Okay, now. These are the 5 pages of the anonymous letter, and this anonymous letter is contained in the Queen's DA Maury Terry notes, which everybody can go and look yourself. Now, I have shown you these 5 pages here because I just want you guys to just get a feel for what this looks like. But I, you know, a lot of it's indecipherable. All right, first things first. But a lot of these letters actually don't deal with Andrew Dupay; they deal with Savage and Foley. So what I've done is I've culled out the original, the stuff that deals with Andrew, and wherever it's undecipherable or hard to read, I have given you guys a translation. Right? I went through this like for hours figuring out every word. Okay. So I'm not going to read this. Okay. You guys can read this on your own if you want to confirm that what I'm reading you on the right is accurate. But I don't write anonymous letters as a habit, but this one is my first attempt at such and has been forthcoming for well over a year since the Son of Sam case was reopened by you and Mr. Middieger so very bravely. Okay, Tracey left us, but she's going to come back. Every time
writing to Queens County here.
I'm sorry?
The anonymous letter, he's writing to whom? The anonymous is writing to Terry?
This anonymous letter here is the anonymous letter that
to
was
Terry, yeah, dear
to
Mr.
Terry. Right. The original letter written to Terry about Dupay and Savage. Okay. So it was reopened by you and Mr. Midiager so very bravely. I have been tremendously interested in this entire matter for a long time and had decided certain things long before you, undecipherable, I couldn't make it out, so cleverly hushed up. Okay. I would have contacted the Yonkers police with the suspicious information I have, but I think you know as well as I, it would have been an undecipherable, okay, I couldn't make out what that said, mistake, considering the force employs two relatives of the late Carr brothers, their sister Wheat and brother-in-law John McCabe. However, here is what I have to say. Okay, so I can actually read this, so I didn't translate it. So it says here, the mailman, Andrew, I forget his surname, who committed suicide a few years ago, knew them, and this was never brought out. They're referring to the Carrs and to the Berkowitz, and was never brought out either. He was a young family man living in his own home off Glenwood Avenue near Berkowitz. After a meeting with an unnamed man in the Pelham Bay Park area of the Bronx, he told his wife that they were threatening him and were going to get his family, unquote. Shortly after, she found him dead in their basement of a bullet wound. Do you think that is unrealistic to connect this suicide with the Sam case? Just because he lives adjacent to the now famous aqueduct, that he too was a mailman, had been undecipherable, I couldn't make out that word, and also knew some of these people and lived within walking distance to all of them. Okay, so essentially this is the anonymous letter that Maury kind of reprints in the book, and those are the passages that deal with Andrew Dupay. Nothing majorly different from what's in the book. But here, so first things first, do you guys have any opinions of this letter, Tracey and then Eric?
Well, it's quite a detailed letter with a great deal of information.
And intimate knowledge, right? It says here in the margins,
intimate knowledge. I mean, it's as if this was somebody who was in a group with people and just has a lot of knowledge about things. I would still have to ponder more and more over it. What year was this written?
Here, Tracey, do you have any opinion?
Not yet.
All right, so here's my opinion, and some people are already saying this in the chat. So this is something I came up with last night, and obviously there's a lot of other people out there too who feel that the possibility exists. Did Maury Terry write this anonymous letter to himself? I am actually, so Hypatia she already said that letter sounds like Maury's writing voice. Give Hypatia a cigar. I noticed the exact same thing. This letter has Maury's voice written all over it. I think it actually has his typewriter as well. I mean, that I can't tell for sure, but it looks like kind of squat and fat, and the letters here are kind of squat and fat. How would an anonymous person have all this intimate knowledge? And then, of course, this thing here makes me very suspect, since the Son of Sam case was reopened by you and Mr. Midiager so very bravely. I mean, this is Maury, I believe, just doing the old circle jerk, giving himself credit, making up his own thoughts, and then confirming them, right, with himself.
It's as if he was actually writing his thoughts out to review what he'd done, and then decides to send it as an anonymous letter.
Exactly. If you read this full letter, and it's kind of like very hard to decipher, it's very hard to read. It's extremely well written. It sounds just like Maury Terry's voice. And knowing what we know now about Maury Terry, I think that the possibility exists that Maury Terry faked this anonymous letter to put forth a narrative in The Ultimate Evil that may have been true, right? Because Andrew Dupay did kill himself. He was the mailman. We do have allegedly, because all of these allegations come out of this anonymous letter.
And the question to ask is why? What's the reason?
Correct. And I almost didn't want to say this with Tracey present, because I don't want you to think that now we're saying your dad had nothing to do with this, or that your dad's death is, but I think that I actually think that it's very probable that your dad's death was related to this whole thing that he witnessed. But I also think that Maury Terry made this stuff up whole cloth. A lot of this, I think he wrote this letter to himself. That's just my opinion. This is just something I am putting out there.
I think you could be right. I think that he was almost analyzing himself and going over his thoughts. Now, suppose there was Savage, and then there was Andrew Dupay and Pelham Bay Park. But then he kind of puts it, this may not have actually been the first time he wrote this. He could have retyped this from notes he had handwritten or typed in a letter before and put it into this format then. Perhaps he also did this to say, look, there should be more of an investigation on this.
Right.
Berkowitz has said he's the only one. There hasn't been a trial. No scrutiny took place during the trial as to how this took place and that took place. And he took this other information of his, which eventually comes out in The Ultimate Evil, puts it all together in this anonymous letter with the hope. You see, that first paragraph you read, you hit the nail on the head where he says bravely. That almost, you see, that he's giving himself away, if it is him, so very bravely.
Right. And I have been tremendously interested in this entire matter for a long time. Who the hell was even thinking about this for a long time in 1980?
Yeah, there's too much of a logical sequence to this.
And
it's
too much of knowledge. Too much knowledge.
Not as if somebody sat down and said, I can't take it any longer. I've got to have courage. I've got to write this. And it would come out differently.
Right. This seems so calm and so focused on an agenda that I could not help but think after reading this, and also noticing that the typings looked just like a lot of other Maury Terry notes, that I think Maury wrote this. But Gary does bring, Book Club and Gary do bring up good points. He could have seen things on his route unrelated to SOS. He was probably threatened, which causes suicide. And Gary, of course, though, wrote, besides, what could Andrew have possibly witnessed anyway? I mean, I don't know what to think. I mean, I think this is an enduring mystery. I think that this anonymous letter is extremely suspect, yet at the same time,
there's a lot of information.
Right. And I don't want to right. And we can't discount that. And we also don't want to come off as like not taking this seriously, because if Maury Terry wrote an anonymous letter to himself, well, then he victimized the Dupay family as well, in my opinion.
And in my opinion, I go back to the friendly neighborhood mailman, and they were. You see a lot of good people, but then he comes across a lot of nefarious things going on. He observes it. That's how he's involved, as an observer, not a participant.
Right.
But then I'm perplexed. You see, there's something though that his observance is more than just seeing something and saying, "Oh, I gotta get on with it," because then there's the manager, the important position at the post office, who knows something important. Whatever he observed.
But don't forget, Eric, all of that information is being filtered through Maury Terry, who's giving it to Queens DA. So we don't have a name of this postal worker, manager. We don't have a name of any of these people. They're all anonymous. Everyone's anonymous in this story.
Yeah.
So it's very tough to come up to any conclusions of any of this, because I mean, we just don't have enough information, in my opinion. By the way, I want to put out there, if anyone wants to call in, please do.
Oh, please do. We want people. Don't be. By the way, what post office did David Berkowitz work in?
149th Street in the Grand Concourse.
That's Yonkers?
No, that's in the Bronx.
That's in the Bronx. He never worked in Yonkers.
He never worked Yonkers. No.
Okay, right.
Anyhow, all right. So listen, if anyone wants to call in, please do. What if Dupay saw DB tampering with the car's mail? Listen, at this point, anything is possible. I mean, Tracey, at the end of the day, you're the one who really matters here, and you're the one whose opinion really counts. At the end of the day, what are you thinking about all this?
I have to agree with you. It does sound a lot like Maury Terry wrote that anonymous letter. He just seemed to know a lot and then put his own spin on things with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So but I would like to know the other postal worker who was in that supervising position and the managerial one as well.
Right, because if we can find these people, then we can confirm this.
Right.
Right, and then we can get you a little more information.
I'm sorry, Manny. 1977?
Yeah, it would have to be 77. Those records exist somewhere. Someone has to know that person. I mean, geez, we're having on Wednesday night, we're having Berkowitz's, the son of Berkowitz's postal supervisor in the Bronx. So these people can be found.
Right.
And so take it a little bit further, Tracey. Take it from the 30,000-foot view. Where are you now on all of this? Like, what are you thinking? Forget about the anonymous letter, just the entire, the whole thing with your dad, son of Sam, suicide, murder.
I think my dad probably was threatened, and I still don't fathom that he would commit suicide like that. He was a family man. He loved us.
Right, right.
And my family, and he enjoyed people. I remember he was friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And he did stuff with us, and it just at a bad time. We lived near all these people. So I wouldn't doubt that he might have known David Berkowitz. I mean, they were both postal workers. They might have hung out and had drinks or something like that. You know, like people meet at clubs or whatever after work.
Right. And
he very might have.
Right. Absolutely.
And you could have known him outside of any cult or homicidal activity, just as a friend.
Right.
Yes.
This is a person.
Once you come on over, we're all meeting in the Bronx.
Hey, look who joined in. We got Noelle Dupay with us.
Yay!
We broke the veil. We got her. Noelle, can we hear your voice? We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
That's a problem. There's a little ship wheel at the bottom that says settings. It's all the way on the right. Go to that and go into audio. And then there'll be a drop-down menu for input. Make sure that it matches whatever your thing is, and then just keep on trying to figure that out. And we'll hear you. As soon as you come through, we'll hear you if you do it correctly.
Hello?
Now we can hear you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, Noelle.
Hi.
Hey. So you're having a little bit of a delay here, but what's your thoughts?
I don't know. I always thought that it was very, very bizarre that that he, it's just bizarre, different towards that time, and I just remember that was what my family did, was not himself in those last couple of weeks. So
right. Well, I mean, wow. I'm wondering if we should have a separate show with just Noelle. Because we're getting on an hour and a half, and I'm not so sure. Would you be willing to come on for a separate show, maybe with better audio?
Sure.
Or do you not have much to say, and you can say it, and you could just say it now? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't want to give you short shrift.
No,
but I also don't. Go ahead.
I mean, like I said, I've always wondered, I don't have a lot of other memories of my sister, but I've just always wondered, and and the whole area at that time, what I was saying in the chat was that we moved away shortly after that, was because the neighborhood was going bad. We kind of did the typical call it, because, and I just assumed that was the fact, but also to stay there where where that had happened.
That, of course, horrible memories.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
But
And I think
but
really, my mom was very involved with, she did it on, so it's not that she wanted to forget everything and didn't want to talk to us. It's just that because, you know, God just kind of protected us, and then we got into a really good church group and everything, and we had a new community there, which I think we were just always under the impression that Yonkers was bad.
Yonkers was bonkers.
And you reminded us
it
that it was a year after your father's death that you left Yonkers, right?
Yeah, because I was in first grade there at that street, Christ the King, and then we were up in Westchester County next year because I started second grade up there. But one of my favorite stories that I did want to share, like my mom just had a great sense of humor, and she would say that like, you know how Eric was saying everyone owed and stuff, and you know, it was always like people would joke around man's kid, or oh, that looks like she looks like the mailman. And when I was in the stroller when I was a baby,
that's funny.
Let them
Noel. Yeah. I might have asked your sister this, but it's just your mother. Did she ever mention, or did she tell your grandparents and they say it? I'm curious. I mean, this is difficult, but the time span of him washing the two of you with your mom, going down to the basement and writing a note. Was there any ever mention about how much time passed from leaving you and then the gunshot?
It had to be quick if he left because we were still in the tub. That's all I remember.
Oh,
so
wow.
maybe a suicide note was written before.
That's possible.
To be that detailed to go into the Italian family in Glen Head.
Hold on. Noel was saying something. Noel?
Well, here was a weird thing, too, that I was weeks ago when I was there at her house. We were, the reason why, because friends of ours came and got us. They lived up the street, Shepherd. And I was always wondering if they were maybe the next door neighbor, because it wasn't the Nettos, but our next door in terrace. And then they brought us back to their house to spend the night. So we were walking because they didn't want us there with the dog. Now, granted, it could have just been because it's a dog. It's all very weird to me that, like, as we're talking about the street, because I went down the street, it was right up. We walked to their house and back.
Right.
That's when
well, listen, Noel, we're having serious technical issues here. You're dropping in and out, and your audio is cutting in and out, and this is way too important to
what you've just said is very, very important.
I think Noel, listen, we need to schedule a pop-up show with you guys, okay? So let's do that now that you're comfortable enough, and let's make sure that all the technicals are working beforehand so we don't have these drop-offs and cut. All right, guys, so I'm going to promise you guys in the audience this is good stuff, but as a producer, I must put my foot down because technically this is not good enough for the airwaves, okay? So I am going to work with Noel and Tracey. We're going to get them back, and we're going to get their technicals, and we're going to continue this conversation another day for sure.
Noel.
Yeah, Noel, we're doing this. In fact,
that's Noel. You listen and you properly respond. You're valuable. I just want to
we need both your perspectives. We need both your stories, and we can't have this bad audio. We got to get her back on again. You guys see how excited I am about this, but I can't let this continue.
Before I go, I just like to say that, Eric, I just love your commentary, and I'm just blessed to be out and with my sister. So I will gladly. I just didn't want to, I wanted my sister to be able to take this
No, this is great
because I'm the older
That's gracious of
one, and I'm always
And I just
No.
want to say, and I say this with compassion and also to everybody listening in, I had said this to you, Manny, when we were off air yesterday. I firmly believe that whether your dad took his own life or someone else, which I tend to feel, not a theory, I feel took his life, it was for the same reason. Even if he was alone committing suicide, it was for the same reason that would have made somebody else also murder him.
Right.
think-
It could very well be. Well, listen.
That's
Gary
just
goes.
the thought.
Gary says Manny's more excited than a gay man in Boys Town. That's a good one, Gary. So listen, no, I am more excited than that. But listen, this is just technically not working. So we're gonna schedule a pop-up, and we're gonna schedule it soon, just to get Noelle's story down for the historical record. And Tracey, you're coming back with her, because the two of you together, I have a feeling there's going to be some memories joggled, and we're gonna get some good stuff. So I think we should end it here then. And guys, stay on the line, please, while I take up the outro, Noelle and Tracey, so we could just talk off the air real quick about possible rescheduling.
Sure.
Quickly, Eric, any last words for the audience?
No, I mean, for the audience, yes, please contribute. Think, but think and contribute. And I still feel that there are people out there who could contribute to this chapter of
Absolutely.
what is the Son of Sam case. I mean, I have to just say to everybody, I do believe Berkowitz wasn't alone. And in saying that, I'm not going against Manny, because I accept what Manny says. You know how I think. I'm
Eric,
not,
you're my boy. We
you, but
No, I know.
I think I just can't help it. Yes, everybody, you know, when Tracey says about her mother in the last show, hearing the cult from St. John's, somebody had doubted that Mr. E, one of the mystery men, had heard it, if he's telling the truth. He was telling the truth. There's too many people.
There's no doubt there was cultists in Untermeyer. But anyway, Eric, so listen, we're going to leave it there. Tracey and Noelle, any last words? Because we're going to get you back soon.
Just want to say thank you, Manny. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Noelle.
You're very welcome, Tracey.
God
It's always a
bless you,
pleasure.
Tracey.
Noelle, thank you. Listen, Noelle, and Tracey, stay on the line, please. I'm gonna just take us all on out of here, and I'll be right back to schedule up a show with you guys.
Want me to
thank
leave?
you. Yes, thanks, Eric. No, don't leave. Don't leave. Stay on. All right, guys. Well, that was something. And of course, I love the spontaneity of that. I just love when Noelle came on and all of a sudden we had her talking, and it was such a shame that the audio cut out. But it actually may be a blessing in disguise, because I have a feeling we're going to get another great show out of this. So super, super important for the Son of Sam historical record to in essence, I'm trying to vacuum up as many oral histories and testimonies as I possibly can. This is not just a criminal investigation for me. This is also a sociological and a culturally anthropological investigation for me as well. I feel it's very important to get all of these stories on the historical record. So on that note, I want to say thank you so much. Amazing show. I'm like super excited to get off the air and schedule this with Tracey and Noelle. And but don't forget, we have some great shows coming up, guys. Wednesday, we got DJ Tony Amato from the Peachtree, who spoke to Berkowitz many times at the Peachtree Disco. So that's going to be a killer show. And then next Monday is the return of Jim Fay, John Rinciari, and Gary Handley for what? For the third and final installment of the Patrick O'Shaughnessy tape. So we're rip roaring it. We're kicking ass and taking no names and prisoners, and we're just forging ahead on the trail of Son of Sam. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next show. Take care.